When to tell others that you have a specific emotional disorder. So, for example, when do you say to somebody, by the way, I have borderline personality disorder? If you're thinking about this in the context of a romantic relationship, let me just say up front that if you have an emotional disorder, you have no business searching out a romantic relationship. So that makes it pretty easy, don't it? That if you're not getting into a committed relationship, then you don't have to feel any obligation to tell somebody that you have borderline personality disorder or whatever it is you're dealing with. I'm not saying that you can't go out and have fun and go on dates and those sorts of things. I'm talking about committed relationships. You have no business, as long as you have not fixed this thing, addressed it, had time to completely eradicate it, you have no business being out in the dating world. It's like you having a sexually transmitted disease at choosing to have sex with other people. Right? The time is not right. You need to get the sexually transmitted disease taken care of before you even put yourself into those sorts of situations. That's sort of what it's like having a borderline personality disorder. What you're doing by going out and searching for a committed relationship is you're selfishly thinking only about yourself and not thinking honestly about what this is going to mean for the other person. You're taking that into their life. Also, if you're getting into a committed relationship with somebody while you have an emotional disorder, the only way that can happen is if that person also is pretty unhealthy, emotionally speaking. Given that those things are true, what's the point? What's the point of two unhealthy people getting into a relationship? You're just begging for pain. So in that context, the answer is you shouldn't be searching for a relationship anyway so that there's ever a need for you to tell somebody, hey, by the way, I have borderline personality disorder. But in other contexts, so for example, your friends, people who've known you for a long time, people at work, those sorts of situations, when should you tell them that you have a specific emotional disorder? Well, in my experience, when I was just beginning to figure things out, and let me give you a little rundown here for people who don't know me. I had borderline personality disorder until I was at least 35 years old, and I didn't know that I had an emotional disorder. I didn't know that anything was out of the ordinary with me whatsoever. In fact, I thought I was completely healthy and normal and everything like that. After a major crisis in my life, I was forced to recognize that I did have an emotional disorder. And then I spent 7 years of my life in intense work on myself, trying to get to the root causes of what it was, understand where it come from, and to eradicate it. And I was successful in doing that. So I have some insights on these things that maybe a lot of other people don't have. In my personal experience, when I was just starting to figure things out, there are people that I wish that I would not have shared the details of my emotional disorder with. I understand this idea of, well, when do I tell somebody? I got to tell them, right? If I don't tell them, it's not being honest. But there's a lot of things that just because we could tell doesn't mean that we need to tell. There's a lot of personal things about ourselves that we could tell. Doesn't mean we necessarily are obligated to or that we have to. So, for example, if I got hemorrhoids sitting here recording this show, I don't necessarily need to tell you that I got hemorrhoids, do I? Recovering from borderline personality disorder is kind of like that. It's personal work that you're doing on yourself, right? So in most cases, there's no need to tell somebody that you have borderline personality disorder or an emotional disorder. Just no real need for it. At the time, it seemed to me like if I were to tell people, hey, I've got borderline personality disorder, and that's what I'm dealing with at work, among some other friendships and that sort of thing, I kind of thought that it would enlighten them and that this would translate into some understanding and patience directed toward me. But that's not what happened. That was not my experience. Instead, it seemed like most people perceived my telling them that as either a lame attempt to try to excuse certain behaviors, or they just simply didn't care, or they were unable to understand the significance of what I was telling them. And the result of this is that I felt more frustration after I told a lot of people than before I told them. And, later looking back, I really wish I'd just kept my mouth shut and waited until I had my recovery process more firmly under my belt. We're going to talk about this a few times today, about this kind of anxiety to say a thing, reveal a thing, reveal them to people, casual acquaintances and family and that sort of, even your parents. Maybe your parents don't know that you have an emotional disorder. And maybe when you find out, that's your first instinct is to run to them and tell them, hey, I've been living with this emotional disorder. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's going to be very frustrating for you. It's not going to improve your situation any. As many insights as you think you've gained at this point, trust me, there will be more. There's a reason why I didn't kick borderline personality disorder after 6 months. It's because I gained insights and I had to build on them. Then I had to search out more insights. Get those insights, build on those, see how they relate to the other insights that I had gained. So don't be in a hurry. Think about how regretful you're going to be if you say a lot of things to people now while you're still an infant, so to speak, as far as recovery goes and as far as being strong, emotionally speaking, goes. Think about how foolish you're going to feel if you do that now, and 3 years down the line, 150 times more than what you know right now. You're going to say, well, there was no reason for me to get into a hurry and start flapping my jaws off at everybody, because there was still so much that I didn't understand and I didn't know. It would have been better if I would have just waited those 3 years. Then if I still felt like I wanted to tell people these things, I could. So that's what happened to me. Looking back, I really wish I'd just kept my mouth shut and waited until I had some recovery experience more firmly under my belt and could then have a clearer mind and perspective on who to share that information with and who not to share it with. The reality is that some of the people that I shared kind of intimate things about my struggle and my life with really didn't deserve to know such personal, intimate things about me. But I was unable to fully understand and appreciate this at that time. But once that cat's out of the bag, it's out. Consider that. You don't get a second chance to decide who you're going to reveal things to. Once you reveal it to somebody, it's done. The cat's out of the bag. And later, if you go, gosh, I didn't need to tell them that. Or, gosh, if I had waited longer and understood more thoroughly what I'm dealing with, when I did say it, talk to them about it, I could have explained it much better. And some of those people now will continue to associate you with that disorder for forever. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that some people will do that. I know that there's people out there. I think about this all the time. People who were in my life during my own authentic recovery. At the beginning of it, when I was going through that crisis and everything, when they think of me today, they surely only associate me with how I was behaving, and all that craziness from back then during that crisis. And goodness gracious, I've changed. I mean, fundamentally, my life has totally changed. I have fundamentally changed as a person. So don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry to reveal things to people that is unnecessary and that you don't maybe even fully understand at this point. Maybe there's more for you to learn. I just don't want you to feel like there's this pressure of time or anything like that, where you just must tell other people. The truth is, you don't have to tell anybody if you don't want. And at the same time, you also don't have to be ashamed of having an emotional disorder either. I assure you this, that you're not going to regret anything by waiting until you've progressed further along in authentic recovery before revealing certain things to others. This will give you the experience and the clarity to make better decisions about how you want to reveal these sorts of things too. But by jumping the gun and sharing it with people early in recovery, there's a great possibility for regrets later. So why not just avoid the regrets altogether? Like I say, time is on your side. Orange Slices are brief highlights from the Last Symptom podcast. Subscribe to full audio episodes of the show on any major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Amazon Music, and more. While I've got you chewing on that, like this video, pretty please. Might as well press subscribe while you're at it. I bet you a nickel you know somebody who's overdue for hearing some of these things, so go on, forward this video to them.